So you went to the Oddsall Super Stadium, home of Speedway, or whatever it is, stock car racing, to see all of the penalties. So obviously we should scrap this trial after 80 minutes because it was a complete failure, Phil.
No, I think the key word is it was a trial. I think
we only believe in trials if they go our way nowadays. Do you not know this?
I think one thing I thought coming back was that firstly the trial is absolutely valid, and we are in a sport that has always looked at change. Now, most of the time that change has been around trying to make it a faster, more entertaining spectacle so that people will pay their money, and in a professional environment that keeps clubs going. This is for safety reasons, so it's a different imperative, but we've never been afraid to look at things or change things. If you know, we went down to 13 men 10 years after we broke away from Northern Union. Well, from Rugby Union came Northern Union. So, you know, we've had red and yellow cards and 4 and 6 tackles and all that kind of thing. So this is the next road you go down to test whether we have to change the legislation around tackling and kick-offs so that some data can be gathered to then say it works, it doesn't work, we'll move it into the community game or into the full-time professional game. You have to start somewhere. So it's a trial. That's how you know, that's the context behind it.
Well, Jamie's brought us the numbers. So in that first game, there were
57 penalties, of which 49 were for tackles deemed to be above the armpit.
Hull FC St Helens 45.
Yeah.
Newcastle Wakefield 40. So there you go. There's a trend immediately. It's going down.
All 3 higher than my 37 that I gave him.
So you're outside the top.
I was a trailblazer.
So the thing about it is, I do believe these trials should have been played behind closed doors. I think the difficult thing watching it at Oddsall with a crowd of about 250, 300 people is clearly the imperative for doing it and the reason for being there is slightly tainted by what you're watching. So it needs to be, you know, you go in there to watch an entertaining spectacle and you're seeing 57 penalties in 80 minutes. It's a bit stop-start. The other thing though, the other side of that is 82 points were scored. So it didn't mean that because there were 57 penalties there wasn't any rugby. And as it happened, the team that offloaded the ball more won the game. And that happened to be the team that didn't have quite as many penalties awarded. So, yeah,
I suppose if you go with the stat penalty try.
Well, in that game it was penalty try. I think there were only about 4 sets that didn't have a penalty, and when the penalties tended to come in blocks. But then, you know, step back and look at it again. The players have been taught for a month that the rules were going to change. You're doing that in a very controlled training environment. Put them in the heat of battle and instinct takes over. You then look at what the referees have got to do. Not only have they got to police everything that they would in a game, and it tends to be younger referees in the academy, but the young referee who I thought, you know, didn't let any of extraneous stuff phase him in any way whatsoever, was wearing a camera. So again, I think that was so that it could all be filmed and analysed later. I think there wasn't anybody saying he was getting the decisions wrong. The fans were saying there were just too many of them.
And the referee would have hated that.
Yeah, and the
players would have hated
it.
The
coaches again are saying, you know, I've told you to sort of slow the play the ball down, but now all the techniques I've told you, there's some of them you can't use anymore. The other thing that struck me as well was that if as a coach, when you get used to how this is being played, you tell your players to duck into a tackle if they're carrying the ball, the target area means that the tackler is almost invariably going to be hitting above the armpit. That's particularly if you're defending on your own line. So if you're a nippy little hooker or a scrum half and you're bending down and you're trying to get the ball over, you're going to get hit in an area that is deemed to be illegal. So there might have to be some adjustments when we've looked at it. We didn't really see whether the 40-metre kick-off made a difference or not. Part of the reason for that, didn't really have 40-metre lines at Oddsall. Because
I'm going to say they didn't have them at Hull, did they, until they had to repaint the pitch. Yeah, oh dear.
So, but the thing is, we have to do it. We have to measure it, and we have to analyse it, and it will change. There's 24 games, I think, in the whole trial, and analyse the data at the end. Not make a judgment on the beginning, but I spoke to a couple of the young players afterwards, and let's face it, we're bringing this in for them because we want them to have long and enjoyable, safe careers, and we don't want them to have any medical issues when they've retired. And whilst they were, again, there were a couple of players I spoke to who played in pivotal positions, and they were saying for them it was a bit too stop-start, but they understand and appreciate why it's being done, and for that reason it's worth doing. I just think we shouldn't have done it in public, particularly the first game.
Quite possibly.
Because there were media there, they were reporting on it, and Odsal is full of dust.
Jamie's mentioned they should have been played pre-season. Academy players are playing for contracts and development. Was the reason why it's introduced mid-season?
I don't think the research was at a level where they could have brought it in any earlier.
I mean,
it is. I mean, again,
I would assume that coaches know how good players are.
When you listen to Professor Ben Jones and some of the medical advice that's brought into, they've now got a brain. I can't remember the exact name, but a committee that looks at the
brain committee.
Well, it doesn't sound right, does it? Who's on the brain?
I want to know who's on the brain committee.
Well, I can tell you it's in the paper.
And
to pass an IQ test, you got to get it.
It's in the magazine. It's not in the paper.
An IQ score of.
Yeah, I wrote it. I just can't remember what I wrote.
I'll tell you who's in there. Hang on.
It's the HIA equivalent of
the Brain Health Group.
Thank you.
Which includes such as Dennis Betts and John Wilkin, both of them have names that are spelt differently than how you'd think. Insurers Bartlett's and doctors Jemmy Phillips and Chris Brooks.
Yeah. And it's led by Professor Ben Jones from Leeds Beckett. So I think that, as he said, you want to rush these things in and do the trials, but you've got to get a point in the research where he said they had numerous things they could have done, and they narrowed it down to 2. Yeah. And the Academy agreed to trial it for them, so you couldn't do it pre-season, I don't think. And it won't be instantaneous. The last game won't finish and they'll go, right, this is what we're doing. No. They'll take it away, they'll analyse it. They'll talk to the referees. I think they're absolutely vital. I think Marcus Griffiths, I think, is mentoring some of the referees that are going to be doing these games. He was there on that Thursday night just to make sure that the match referee didn't have to do any media, and talked about why they were doing it and what they were hoping to get out of it. And clearly, in terms of the litigation that is around at the moment, we have to be seen to be doing it.
And there might be another trial that comes off the back of this, because it'll be informed from the data that's come out of this. So I think you can't draw conclusions off the first game or the first couple of games.
Say, everybody talked about the 57 penalties. There were 82 points as well. So
it's not changing rules for the sake of changing rules, just to annoy people.